he said about how long this was going to take when he sit down for an hour or two, and I was like, are you kidding me? I can't sit still for that long without a beer, you know.
Shelley Proffitt Egan didn't grow up on a farm and didn't grow up with horses and cows, but that didn't stop her and her husband Brian from moving their young family from Colorado to Kings Mountain, North Carolina to help on her parents' growing cattle farm in the winter of 2008. Her husband had spent his childhood summers on a sheep and cattle farm in Idaho, and he knew his way around a ranch, so before they knew it, the family was raising cattle and selling organic grass-fed beef in North Carolina. Shelley took their first grass-fed beef to the Charlotte Regional Farmers Market in May 2009, and when she returned the next weekend, customers were waiting for her because the beef was a hit. That fall, Proffitt Family Cattle Company became the first certified organic beef operation in North Carolina and South Carolina, and over the next several years, they sold at 3 farmers markets in Charlotte and multiple restaurants, groceries, and even Whole Foods.
Shelley?
Mark?
Thanks for having us out on the farm.
Oh, I'm glad y'all could be here. It's a nice day.
It is, definitely. I was actually kind of excited. I was at work before we got here today, and they're like, you know, why are you cutting out early today? So I was like, I got to go out and film, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, where are you going? And just kind of laid it out real quick. They're like, be a nice day to be out on a farm.
Yeah.
And this is a heck of a view.
This is a favorite spot on all the farms. Looking out the back barn door to the west, and the sun goes down. We're in the morning, the dew lifting and the fog going up. It's a pretty spot.
You're going to sell it to everybody. They're all going to want to be farmers.
Well, her new number is 56. Do you like it? It's okay.
So how did you guys end up here?
Well, my parents bought property here back in 2000, and they didn't want to live in the city anymore, and they sort of retired to the country, so to speak. They came from a rural upbringing themselves in South Alabama and such, and so they wanted to live out of the city.
So you guys were not always cattle?
No, yeah, we're relatively new to that. You know, Dad would have been, I guess, early 60s whenever he bought that property, even late 50s, I guess.
Wow.
And but he was always interested in farming. And when you buy that land, you know, you kind of, it's better to have something eating that grass. Otherwise, you're going to have to go out there and mow it all the time. You know, it's a fight against Mother Nature if you don't bring in an adversary.
Right.
So.
Did he have an understanding of how it went, or did he just kind of go all in?
Nope. We like to learn everything the hard way in this operation. So we've pretty much learned everything as we go. And we go to conferences and read books, talk to people. You know, a lot of local folks who have run cows for a long time have been a help to us. So, but yeah, he didn't know anything about cows when he started, and but he read a lot, educated himself, and and worked with some other people to get started on it.
163 yellow tag, 97 yellow tag.
Now, being a female in a male-dominated industry, what's that like?
Yeah, that's from the get-go. Initially, when I first started meeting people, and they didn't really take me very seriously. And I was younger too, and most cattle farmers are older men, and so the youthful part and lack of experience didn't give me a lot of credence. And then as time went on, we were successful in selling a really good product. People kind of we got some attention that way, and that kind of gave us a little more credence. And also I started to realize from talking to them that I knew what I was talking about. And then of course young people who are my age or younger are completely accepting of the idea that sure, a woman could do that. You know, that's.
Why shouldn't they be?
Yeah, right. Like it never occurred to them that there would ever be any reaction otherwise. It's mostly of the older generations who are just. My favorite one is I can't remember. We were somewhere at a conference or something, and standing next to this older guy, and who's a cow man, and somebody else came over and was talking to me, and he turned and he said, "So what do you do on the farm?" And I thought about it for a second. I said, I do everything on the farm. And he just kind of walked away. Like, I really don't think he believed me.
Right.
It was pretty funny.
There you go, Audrey. Thank you.
How hands-on are you? Do you have to be with a cow?
Oh, it just depends on the situation. For the most part, we like to be able to herd and move our cows without having to touch them. Like, I need them to have a flight zone, which is how close I can get to them before they move, that is reasonable for me. Now, if I should be able to walk up to them and get 20 feet away or 10 feet away and have them go in the direction that I'm trying to get them to go without a big to-do. If I have to walk all the way up to them and push them on the butt and, you know, put all my weight onto them, then they're too tame. Those are the ones that are just they have no rodeo left in them whatsoever for one reason or another. And you get them to be really tame like that just based on disposition. I mean, they see us all the time. Every herd sees somebody pretty much every day. And so they get used to the sound of the trucks, and they know, they remember things. They know people, they know trucks.
When they get excited, they're like, is it like a nervous excited, or is it like Christmas morning excited?
I don't know. I can't really tell. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it might be some, because sometimes, like, you know, if we come on and we're bringing the bull to the property for breeding season, some of the cows would go the other way. And, you know, they're like, oh no, it's in again, you know. And
Pass.
some of the cows run over, and as soon as he's off, they're licking him and grooming him and all. I'm like, jeez, you know, baby. But yeah, sometimes you have to get right up on them. And whenever you move the bulls, I always, you know, caution the people about moving the bulls. They are bulls. They're 2,000-pound animals. They're big. Don't get comfortable with them. We always make sure they're very tame. That's really important to me. I don't want to be calling up anybody's family and having to explain that, you know, your teenage son or young, you know, your husband was mauled by a bull. So I always encourage everyone to exercise caution and know where they are all the time. You
know where the bull is?
Know where the bull is,
Yeah.
If you're working in the herd, if you're working on the fence or you're putting out minerals or whatever, you need to know where he is.
That's funny, because an animal that big is actually pretty quiet if you're focused on, like, doing, you know, I grew up in kind of a rural setting, or spent enough time out there, so I'm not a fan of bulls at all, to be honest with you.
Right, yes.
And I can tell you there's been many times to be out, like, playing in my friend, like, out of my friend's yard, and they had cattle out there, and it was like, next thing you know, you turn around, and luckily we're inside the pen. But you turn around, I'm like, holy.
And there they are.
Yeah. Like, you wouldn't think an animal that big
would be that fat. They can cover some ground.
Well, and they're quiet though too.
Yeah,
like, you don't know they're up on you until it's until they're well within your own flight zone.
And they we keep multiple bulls at a time because we have a large herd of cows, and we at one point in time had ended up with a faulty bull who wasn't getting the breeding done, and we didn't have anybody to fill in, so I had to spend all this time researching and get a new bull. And during that, you know, several months of breeding time we passed while I was doing that. So in an effort to make that never happen again, we keep bulls from our own stock and raise them out to be herd bulls. So we have like 7 at a time, and that's a fair number to keep on one pasture. You know, they need to have their own space, and you know, if you're trying to catch them up and sort one out, then they're busy focused on each other, and they're constantly working that pecking order and establishing who's the biggest and the toughest. And they really are hilarious if you understand how they're posturing and all what they're doing. You can really see how they interact together, you know, and it changes constantly. You know,
it's like a bunch of frat brothers.
Absolutely, it absolutely is, and they'll have, you know, most of them have spent their entire lives together. It's not like they're new.
Right.
We're not bringing in a new bull that they have to deal with. But it's like every day they wake up and they're like, today's the day.
Dana, is that 380 there? Never mind.
With everything that goes on, sometimes, especially because I'm not a farmer, I forget there's all, like, you know, there's all these other elements to the business, one of them being organic. They don't come out here and award you an organic thing. It's a pay to play, right?
Yeah, right. And we have to be audited every year within the calendar year. So it has to be, I can't go a month, 12 months in a month. They got to be on the farm every year, and we have to fill out the paperwork is become outrageously extensive, I have to say. It's far more complicated than it used to be whenever we first got organic. And so there's a fee involved with that, to have an auditor come out, and there's a company that they represent a company, they're all independent contractors, the auditors, so they get a chunk, and then the company who processes the paperwork and is working with the USDA, then they have to get paid too, because they got an office full of people.
Right. Does the USDA get paid as well?
Nope.
They're the only ones that don't
They're
collect?
the only ones that don't. Yeah, they're strictly marketing, and that's your tax dollars right there. Yeah. Yeah. Those are your government officials, and they lay down the rules, and then but the USDA can audit the auditors, so to speak. So if that makes sense, so the USDA can go back to the company that I use and look through my file and say, oh, you didn't get this T crossed and this I dotted over here. You better call her up and get this document that you're missing. And the documents that we have to come up with are sometimes pretty ridiculous.
It sounds like a far cry from what everybody's romantic idea of what being a farmer or a rancher is like.
And it's so prohibitive now. Like, there's no way people who haven't done it before, I think, will take it on.
What makes it more prohibitive now than what it was?
Just getting through that paperwork. It's, college degree kind of material. It'd be like doing your taxes for a big company with some questions on there that if I hadn't already been certified, I wouldn't know, don't apply to me. Every property that we have had to have every pasture labeled, every fence described, what's on the other side of every fence, where the water and where the hay is kept and where the barns are in every building. And one time I put hay in a building that I had not put hay in before, and I had to fill out 3 more documents.
These were addendums that you had because all of a sudden now you're keeping hay in that building?
Right.
So
Talk about what the floor is made of.
Why is that of a concern, though?
Because really what it is the big businesses have gotten into it, and so now it's become they have to check all of this stuff. Whereas smaller people like us, I'm not going to build a brand new building, probably to put hay in and put some kind of nasty treatment on the floor. But a really, big ag, they're going, because they're so big, which is not conducive to organic. You can't really confine animals and have them stay healthy and then therefore be organic. That's why. So they've had to become much more thorough to prevent people from taking shortcuts and trying to capitalize on the market on a large scale.
So in a roundabout way, even though it's become more prohibitive, at least it's for more transparency.
It is. It's so that they can be more transparent and more checking. But the sad thing is that the whole idea, I think, is that we will keep it legitimate and true to what being organic is. But what's going to happen is the little people who are doing it organically on a small scale won't get certified. What will happen is the people who can afford to pay somebody to come in and do all of that paperwork for them, the big ag companies who are willing to hire a team of people who are not farmers but who know how to fill out that paperwork and they know how the answers to check, the ones who can hire those kind of folks, they'll get certified.
He's pretty well balanced. They talk about how you don't want to have them too heavy in one place or the other. They need to be balanced, like butt, mid, and front.
People that consider themselves in the know or whatever about things, would say like organic doesn't really mean anything, or it means a lot of things. So, it kind of takes. Yeah,
that my favorite one is beyond organic. So you can't do less than nothing to a cow. Okay, there's nothing. You cannot be beyond organic in the cattle, in the true cattle world. Now, that might be true for chickens. If you could get an organic chicken that has been shut up in a house its whole life and never scratched around on the ground, unfortunately. And the USDA is trying to change that and make it more true to what people think of as how chickens should be raised from a humane standpoint. But on the beef industry, that's why you're not going to go to the store and find a whole lot of certified organic beef in the market in your standard grocery store. And that's because it is really difficult to do, because they're going to get sick if you confine them. It's stressful. They're a herd animal, and if you shut them up into like a tight space in a feedlot and feed them nothing but organic corn and grain, you know, you're going to have an animal that's going to get sick. That's going to cut in on the bottom line, and as soon as they got to have a shot of antibiotics, they're out.
So if your cow gets a shot of antibiotics, unlike some chickens where they can be 45 days out, and then I think it's 45, and they're allowed and allowed back in and still be considered. Well, I think, and I may be wrong. I think that's when they're still considered all natural, not considered organic.
It's all natural. Yeah, all natural as a label, it's absolutely just means nothing, you know. And try to talk, and the label, trying to navigate that in the store now can be really overwhelming. But you know, all natural deals with what they do to that meat, bird, whatever product, granola bar, after it's killed. So if you're concerned about what went into that animal before it became a steak, then all natural is, that means nothing. And to be truly grass finished is another thing. So we're two separate things, and I've tried to explain. We get newcomers to the farm every once in a while who are like, oh, I want to try some grass fed. So we're grass fed and finished. The corn, they never have corn or grain ever. There's no, feeding them out on soybean hulls at the end to try and fatten them up and gain. There's none of that. They strictly do just eat the grass growing out of the ground and hay that we make. And that's what my customers think grass-fed means, and that's what we're going to create. And it just makes they just taste better. And they are smaller at slaughter. We're good. We do around 900 pounds, 950. Every once in a while I get some that are bigger than that.
Right.
But,
and comparatively, one that's grass-fed but grain-finished will go about 1,300.
Yeah, and they'll want them to be at least 12. That grass-fed, where maybe they supplement them on soybean hulls, they'll still be over 1,000 pounds. And but it dilutes the flavor of the meat. A truly grass-finished animal has a unique flavor that you can tell. It does make a difference. And just from what I have read, then they say that you only have to feed them for 30 days to negate that fat profile and change the fat profile on a cow, such that they have then less of the omega-3s, which is the beneficial good fat, and more of the omega-6s.
You talk about this is when they grain finish or corn finish them?
Right. Yeah, so if you're adding in that grain to fatten them at the end, even for 30 days, it changes the quality of the meat.
And then we got a note tag in here. Just have a tag.
Stick them in with the littles. Audrey, we're going to be putting some wieners in that thing. That's a go down and shoot with Dowie.
You guys did not grow up as farm children.
Nope.
Right.
Right, yeah.
You said that your dad was retired here from the city?
Yeah, so he and my mom grew up as children in a rural South, in South Alabama and maybe out in Florida, and so their roots are in a rural country. And my siblings and I graduated from high school in Charlotte, and my dad was a businessman there. And so whenever they were looking to retire, it wasn't going to be staying in the city. So they bought land out in Cleveland County out here in Kings Mountain, which is a nice distance to the city. You can still go visit, but yet it's a small town life. It's a rural community. There's a lot of cattle farming out here and a lot of produce farmers as well, carrying stuff up to Charlotte. So it was a good spot for them to settle. They bought maybe 70 acres to begin with. Built a house on it, and gradually added more and more land. And when about the time they finished the house, a gentleman, a local guy, came and knocked on the door and introduced himself and said, I'd like to lease your land and put cows on it. And Dad didn't know anything about cows, had no background in cattle, but was curious and had some time. And said, well, let's go 50-50. You teach me what you know about cows, and I'll get the cows, and we'll do it together. And that's what he did.
Okay, no tag.
That was pretty big there.
I know.
At the time, my husband and my kids and I were living in Colorado, and I came back here for 2 weeks in the summer every year. And every year I came back, it was like there was more and more work to do on the farm. And
when you were here for the 2 weeks, were you working when you were here?
Yeah, so I would work as much as I could with the kids, and then really, I guess it was 2008, there was just a lot of work. So Dad had continued to expand the farm without any help, really, because he's just a glutton for punishment.
So it was just him and that other guy at that point?
And the other guy had gone his own way, so it was really just Dad.
Holy crap.
I know, he's crazy. So, so I got here in fall 2008, or really right around Christmas, and he had like 30 or 40 steers and heifers who were of slaughter age. I'd never eaten anything but grass. And
So now-
I was like, what are you gonna do with all these animals? What are you gonna do with all these cows? And he said, well, we're gonna sell them. And I said, well, who's going to buy them? Because I didn't really understand what you would, do you sell them live or what? And he was like, well, you know me, you can figure that out.
What do you do, pick up the phone book, go through the yellow pages?
Well, I went to this, they were doing this like half day. He's like, I've been reading about grass-fed beef and it's really good for you, yada, yada, yada. And they were doing this little half day like conference panel up in Asheville on grass-fed beef. So I went and they made it seem so easy. Right?
To listen to him talk
to
about
listen
it.
to him talk about it. And it was like a 3-hour question and answer thing. And so people were asking questions, and they said, essentially, you need to get a relationship with a processor. So of course I called up Maze Meats and was like, hi, I'm Shelley, you haven't met me yet, and of course they were like, great, another one. They didn't care. And then you go to get a meat handler's license. So I call up the NCDA and have them come out. Now, if you can fog a mirror, you can get a meat handling license.
What's the basic requirements? A pulse?
Yeah, like you gotta have, so the meat handling license gives you the ability to legally sell meat from your house, farm, whatever. So I got that, and then I went to the farmer's market. We slaughtered one in May of 2009, and I went to the farmer's market, Mom and I, and with one cooler, and we sold out quickly. And the next weekend, we went back to the farmer's market, and Frank, because the old guy running the farmer's market, and lots of people might remember him, and he said, no, we're full. You can't come in. And I said, no, you gotta let me in. I got all these people who are gonna come back and buy me. I just talked to him last week, and he said, well, we're full, you can't come in. So Mom and I drove in and drove around. There was this really sweet Russian lady who made homemade bread and rolls. Mm-hmm. And we said, we'll pay your table fee if you'll let us share this space with you. I promise I'll tell everybody to buy your bread. And they did, and her bread was really good. But this happened to me 3 times in the first 3 weeks.
Which farmer's market was this?
The big one out there on Tyvola, regional farmers market. Okay. People came up to me, this is after they had bought meat from us one time, and I really didn't have anything to compare it to. I didn't eat a lot of meat at the time or know how to cook beef. So I wasn't sure, I didn't have anything to compare it to. I knew it tasted good to me, but I didn't really know how it was going to go. People came back and they said, oh my God. And then my first thought was, oh no, it was bad, And they said, that was the best meat I've ever had in my life. And I was like, oh, phew, and then that started happening a lot. And really that was spring of 2009. And we started, eating more meat at the house, and every time we eat it, we were like, it's just so damn good. I don't know how, but it's shockingly delicious. And what the conclusion that we really came to was that whatever they're doing to other beef out there is really off of what you're supposed to be, how these animals are supposed to be raised. Right. Because we're not doing anything mysterious or magical in this operation, and so it's a far cry from what's being raised.
If you take a look at what goes on with big agriculture.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on farming, but I've been around the industry long enough to know what big agriculture looks like. And when you look out and see this, as opposed to it is kind of magical though to a certain degree.
That's true.
Sunshine and grass.
It's really basic. It's a pretty damn simple formula, And so we were shocked and dismayed at the superior product that it turned out to be.
Well, I think that's a great way to end the conversation.
Well, I'm so glad y'all came.
Thanks for having us today. Yeah. This is awesome.
Thank you.
I'm upset that I hadn't been out here before.
Well, we'll go back to the meat room now and get y'all some meat.
I look forward to it. Shelley, thanks for having us.
No, it's fun.
Point at Pete, wave.
I could talk about cows endlessly until you just want to kill yourself, but nobody wants to hear that. So that's the best way to run people off. I have found at a cocktail party. Started talking about cows, and the next thing you know, everybody's gone.